Back on the Young Turks. And that music is because we're about to have a very fun guest for you guys. John Ziegler, who I'm describing as the #1 defender of Sarah Palin in the country, is in studio, as you can tell. John's been a longtime radio host, obviously conservative, and he's also got a movie out that's called Media Malpractice, How Obama Got Elected and Palin Was Targeted. And then he has described Palin's book, Going Rogue, as by far the best book and greatest literary achievement by a political figure in my lifetime. So those are interesting and strong words, John.
I'm guessing you don't agree.
Yeah, to say the least. Okay, we're going to get into that disagreement, of course, in just a minute. But first, other than the movie, what are you doing now, John? Are you still on the radio or no?
I was doing a radio show here in Los Angeles up until a few months ago when the station turned to all music. But I've been going across the country screening the film, Media Malpractice. We've done it in 20 different markets, still promoting it almost every single day, and still trying to change minds about the real Sarah Palin as opposed to the media caricature of her.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because obviously you and I tremendously disagree on that. You read my blog on what I call the irrefutable stupidity of Sarah Palin.
Right.
We're going to see if you can refute that.
I will look forward to that opportunity, believe me.
Okay, so now, John, when Sarah Palin was first introduced as the candidate, the vice presidential candidate, we did a show here, and I did about 10 minutes on her positives and 10 minutes on her negatives, okay?
Are you sure it was 10 and 10?
No, and we have it on YouTube, and
Okay.
you can check it out.
I'll trust you.
Okay, and I said, look, she's got great poll numbers in Alaska, okay?
Right.
And at that time, it was near 80%. So
Right.
and she's young, and that's going to help appeal to some people, but yet she has some executive experience, et cetera. And I laid out the positives. And then what happened was, now I wasn't going to be on her side ideologically,
Sure.
okay? So that's obvious, right? But I'm not on the side of Dick Cheney ideologically, but I don't think he's stupid. I think he's a really bright guy, very, very bright guy, and I respect him for what he's been able to accomplish. All right. So, but as I saw Sarah Palin in the interviews, I began to get a sense that this woman just was not up to the job, that she was in over her head. You did not get that sense. So walk me through that. You see her, you see the performance, and you think, bingo, this is the right person?
Well, to give you a little bit of background, I was at the Republican convention, and I was blown away by her convention speech, like everyone in that building was. And my first reaction was to go to some of the McCain campaign operatives that I knew and said, don't you dare let her do any taped interviews in the major liberal media, because they will use that to destroy her. Do not let her do anything that's not live, because live, this woman will be spectacular. Taped, all bets are off, because you will essentially give the enemy the power to create the perception about her, and that's exactly what happened.
And John, when you say liberal media, you mean almost all the mainstream media. Like, because we view the mainstream media as far too conservative.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Well,
Okay.
That's an interesting world to live in. But I'm talking about the non-Fox News Channel, non-right-wing talk radio universe.
Okay.
Virtually everything other than that, with some small internet exceptions to that rule, is very liberal in my opinion.
And so do you think the Gibson interview, the Kirk interview, et cetera, were they doctored, or why was it wrong?
Well,
the way
I
they
go into great detail on both of those interviews in my film, Media Malpractice, which has an exclusive interview with Governor Palin from her home that made quite a bit of news earlier this year, where we talk extensively about both the Gibson interview and the Kirk interview. You, in your Huffington Post column, reference a bite in the Charlie Gibson interview that you thought was an indication that Sarah Palin must be stupid. It's the infamous Bush doctrine question. I find this fascinating, because I find this little episode to be like a Rorschach test. You look at it as if she must be stupid. I look at it as the question was, if anything was stupid in that interchange, it was the question.
All right,
and
great.
the way that it was asked.
And the reason I'm interrupting you there, John, is because we have the clip. So I want to play the clip for you guys and for you, John, and then let's come back and talk about it and talk about our different interpretations of it. So here's Sarah Palin with Charlie Gibson.
I know.
Do you agree with the Bush doctrine?
In what respect, Charlie?
The Bush. Well, what do you interpret it to be?
His worldview?
No, the Bush doctrine, enunciated September 2002, before the Iraq War.
I believe that what President Bush has attempted to do is rid this world of Islamic extremism, terrorists who are hell-bent on destroying our nation. There have been blunders along the way, though. There have been mistakes made. And with new leadership, and that's the beauty of American elections, of course, and democracy, is with new leadership comes opportunity to do things better.
The Bush doctrine, as I understand it, is that we have the right of anticipatory self-defense, that we have the right to a preemptive strike against any other country that we think is going to attack us. Do you agree with that?
Charlie, if there is legitimate and enough intelligence that tells us that a strike is imminent against American people, we have every right to defend our country.
Do we have the right to be making cross-border attacks into Pakistan from Afghanistan, with or without the approval of the Pakistani government?
As for our right to invade, we're going to work with these countries, building new relationships, working with existing allies, but forging new also, in order to, Charlie, get to a point in this world where war is not going to be a first option. In fact, war has got to be, and military strike, a last option.
But Governor, I'm asking you, we have the right, in your mind, to go across the border with or without the approval of the Pakistani government?
In order to stop Islamic extremists, those terrorists who would seek to destroy America and our allies, we must do whatever it takes, and we must not blink, Charlie, in making those tough decisions of where we go and even who we target.
And let me finish with this. I got lost in a blizzard of words there. Is that a yes, that you think we have the right to go across the border, with or without the approval of the Pakistani government, to go after terrorists who are in the Waziristan area?
I believe that America has to exercise all options in order to stop the terrorists who are hell-bent on destroying America and our allies. We have got to have all options out there on the table.
All right. See, what I heard there, John, was first when he asked about the Bush doctrine, she seemed not to know what he's referring to. Now,
well, wait a minute, hold on.
Okay.
That's what I meant by the Rorschach test.
Right.
Because you have a predisposition that she's an idiot. Anything that indicates that she's an idiot to you, you go, aha, she's an idiot. But as she said to me in my interview with her, after I played a clip from that very Charlie Gibson interview, she said to me, what the heck was wrong with that answer? He had not defined what the heck he meant by the Bush doctrine, and many experts, including Charles Krauthammer, no one could ever say he's not an expert on this issue, agreed that there's no such thing as a Bush doctrine, or certainly not one that is well enough defined to simply sit there, as Charlie Gibson did with his glasses over his nose, like that condescending professor, saying, well, what's the Bush doctrine? It wasn't until later in that clip that he defined his terms, and she answered the question perfectly fine.
All right, John, I actually did not have a predisposition to think that she was an idiot before that interview. That was the first interview. Well, and I remember watching that clip going, wow, she doesn't know the Bush doctrine. I knew the Bush doctrine.
Wait a minute.
I thought everybody knew the Bush doctrine, but you're saying you didn't know the Bush doctrine? You're saying the Bush doctrine might not even exist?
When she says to him, when she asks the question back, you mean his worldview? She's asking him to simply define what he's asking.
No.
That's all she's doing. What is wrong with that?
John, you didn't think Bush doctrine was preemptive strikes? You didn't
That is the most, wait a minute. You make it sound as if Bush doctrine was something that he talked about all the time, that this was well defined, this was well known. You could define the Bush doctrine in 3 or 4 different ways. So if she had answered that question without asking for the clarification, she would have been an idiot. But she's not an idiot.
No, John,
she's
what I
an
would have
incredibly smart person, and if you spoke to her, you would probably know that. Or if you read her book, you would probably know that. Or if you saw my interview with her, you would probably know that.
See, I would have asked, hey, Bush doctrine, you mean the preemptive strike policy, right? Or do you mean something else, Charlie? That would have been an exception. She seemed lost. All right, but let's move on to all the different parts because we've got a lot to get to. In there, when he asked, hey, would you do a cross-border raid or a drone strike in Pakistan, again, she seemed to be lost. She first mentioned invading Pakistan. No one had that on the map. You don't invade Pakistan. That's crazy talk. Why did she mention that?
Well, wait a minute. Hold on a second. There were the circumstances, and I don't remember verbatim what Charlie Gibson said there, but the circumstances that he was outlining were incredibly open-ended. I mean, he was creating the impression that there are dire circumstances. Do we have the right? Do we have the right? Not would you, but do we have the right to go into Pakistan? What is she supposed to say in those circumstances?
She's supposed to say, Charlie, it's a tough question because we want to work with the government of Pakistan. We don't want to alienate them, and there's nuclear weapons there, etc. But at the same time, we want to be able to have the right to go after bin Laden and Zawahiri in northern Pakistan. That's an intelligent answer.
That's essentially what she said.
Okay, again, it's amazing because we look at the same thing, and
that's what she says.
I don't think that's what she said. She said first she talked about invading Pakistan, then she gave an answer about we must not blink. I don't know what that means, and Charlie Gibson didn't know what that meant, and then finally she said all options are on the table, which I suppose means yes, we can do drone strikes, although she didn't say that. And maybe it means we can invade Pakistan because that's what she initially said.
By the way, where was the clip from Charlie Gibson being as much of a pit bull and trying to get a specific answer on an invasion of Pakistan with either Obama or Biden? I must have missed that particular episode because you know what, that didn't happen, and that's my biggest gripe here is that I'm all for vigorous questioning of every politician, but there is no comparison, zero, when you look at the clips of a Charlie Gibson or Katie Couric or Brian Williams in how they treated Obama, the presidential candidate, versus how they treated Sarah Palin, the vice presidential candidate. It's not even close.
No, John, again, we must be seeing different things because Obama was asked and had very specific answers about Pakistan. It might not have been with Charlie Gibson, but it was in other interviews where he said, I would be more aggressive in doing drone strikes. And that became big news.
Show me the clip.
And in fact, they said, hey, wait a minute now, Obama's going further than Bush in saying what he would do in Pakistan.
I remember that controversy,
right.
but show me the clip where a news anchor went after him with follow-up after follow-up to try to define exactly what he meant there. Because I agree with you. I thought his answer on that was in what you might call stupid range. Kind of like when he said, I've been to 57 states, one more to go. That might be considered to be a stupid statement if you thought he was a dummy.
Why is drone strikes in Pakistan stupid? We just killed one of the top al-Qaeda leaders today.
No, because the issue, and we're getting really deep in the woods here for a subject that was supposed to be is Sarah Palin stupid, which she's not. But the issue with Pakistan is, of course, that we have an ally. We have an ally with nuclear weapons there. That changes the equation with regard to what might destabilize that government and what the rules of engagement ought to be.
So you don't want to be as I don't want to characterize what you just said. All right, so let's move on to the second clip because I think that for me this was the straw that broke the camel's back. I saw this and I thought it was game over, but I'm curious about your reaction. So here's her answer about Hamas.
What happens if the goal of democracy, Governor Palin, doesn't produce the desired outcome? For example, in Gaza, the U.S. pushed hard for elections and Hamas won.
Yeah, well, especially in that region, though, we have got to protect those and support those who do seek democracy and do seek protections for the people who live there. And, you know, we're seeing today in the last couple of days here in New York, a speaker, a president of Iran, Ahmadinejad, who would come on our soil and express such disdain for one of our closest allies and friends, Israel. And we're hearing the evil that he speaks, and if hearing him doesn't allow Americans to commit more solidly to protecting the friends and allies that we need, especially there in the Mideast, then nothing will. If Americans are not waking up to understand what it is that he represents, then nothing is going to wake us up, and we will be lulled into some kind of false sense of security that perhaps Americans were a part of before 9/11.
Now, Katie Couric, in my estimation there, asked a great question. And the question was, look, Hamas won the elections, but on the other hand, we're against Hamas. So that's an interesting thing to grapple with. She didn't seem to mention the Gaza Strip, Israel. She didn't give any indication that she had any idea who Hamas was. And she said, in fact, if you take her words literally, she said, we must protect those who seek democracy. So is she saying we should have protected Hamas?
Well, first of all, for the record, in that answer, she does mention Israel. It's a little bit later on in the clip there. But I will agree with you, and I agree with your reading of this in your Huffington Post piece, that she does not answer the question. I'll agree. Sarah Palin does not answer that question. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean she's an idiot or is she stupid? No. There are a lot of reasons why she wouldn't answer that question, one of which, by the way, happens to be the culture of that particular interview with Katie Couric. And as I define and outline and document in my film, Media Malpractice, and as she does in her book, that Katie Couric interview had gone way sideways long before that moment. And Sarah Palin knew that she was in a situation where there were trapdoors everywhere and that there was almost nothing good that was going to come of taking any chances whatsoever. So she was uncertain as to what she should say. She dodged the question. And I understand why she did it based upon the way Katie Couric was conducting those series of interviews.
See, again, you're looking at it as she dodged the question. I looked at it as she didn't have a prayer and how to answer. And I'll tell
what
you
are you
why.
basing that?
Because she goes on a tangent on Ahmadinejad, right? She doesn't connect it to, hey, Ahmadinejad's government might be funding Hamas. So she doesn't do any of that. She just doesn't talk about Israel, doesn't talk about the Gaza Strip, doesn't talk about Hamas. It seems to the average viewer, John, that she's lost in the woods.
Well,
she's
no.
like, Ahmadinejad is evil. That's what she said. Ahmadinejad is evil.
Right.
But what does that have to do with, wait a minute now, Hamas won the elections.
Right.
And don't you want a candidate who answers that question? Because it's a good question.
Oh, and I would have liked to have seen what would have happened when Obama was asked that question, but he was never asked that direct question during the campaign because it's a tough question. It's very difficult when you have a situation where we're supposed to be pro-democracy and democracy turns out that the terrorists often win, like what happened with that particular election. So I would like to see any candidate answer that question. She didn't answer it, again, because of the culture of the interview. Again, she did mention Israel, but I think it's interesting that you presume that because she doesn't answer a question, it must be, she's an idiot or she's stupid. Without that, to me, is a circular argument. You're presuming she's stupid, and then everything that might indicate that she could theoretically be stupid, you automatically say that that's the explanation.
Even if I think you're right, which I don't for a second. Okay.
Really?
Even if I thought, hey, you know what? She's just trying to dodge the question, right? Well, there is a million better ways to dodge the question. At least leave the audience with a sense that you understand who Hamas is, that you understand what the Gaza Strip is, or that you understand what the problem is. If you frame it that way, you have to understand that people are going to think you didn't know what the hell you were talking about, and hence you're underqualified, you're stupid, etc.
You don't think that if I did the same thing with every single clip of an interview that Barack Obama gave under much kinder, gentler circumstances, by the way, because no one went after him the way they went after Sarah Palin. You don't think that I could find numerous clips where Barack Obama dodges a question and indicate...
No, but that's exactly what I'm talking about, John. When we did the clips when Obama dodges questions. Right. It was in the primaries, it was in the general election. But you point out how he artfully dodged the question, letting you know that at least I know what the issue is, but I don't want to answer it. Whereas with her, I mean,
I don't think anyone's arguing that Barack Obama is a better technical speaker than Sarah Palin.
Okay.
No one is
at
arguing
least we have agreement on that. We have reached an agreement on that.
No one is arguing that, especially when he has his teleprompter. Without the teleprompter, it might be a different story.
I don't even want to get in that. But John, listen, can you see how the rest of us look at it and go, she didn't know? It appears she doesn't know a single Supreme Court decision. It appears she doesn't know what Gaza and Hamas is. Can you see how that impression is left?
I understand it, and it's largely because of the perception that was created by a Katie Couric interview where the evidence is overwhelming. Katie Couric had it out for her. But
why do you say that? Those are perfectly good questions, and you said it was a perfectly good question.
It's a perfectly good question. I'm giving you the reason why she dodged the question, and I'm giving you... I have numerous examples in my film where the Katie Couric interview was edited in a way that clearly was intended to make her look, in your words, stupid. There's so many examples of that we probably don't have enough time for it, but you mentioned a couple of others in your statement there. And again, I go back to this. There's two things you need to understand. The culture that she was in, knowing the famous or infamous "what do you read" question. This is the ultimate Rorschach test. You presume, I'm sure, that she didn't know what she reads because she doesn't read or because she was too panicked to know what the heck she reads.
John, I'll tell you exactly what I said right after that. It's on YouTube, so you can check it.
Right.
I said, look, I assume she reads something. Why won't she answer the question? It makes her look dumb. On that one, I gave her a bit of a pass because I said, look, she's got to read something, right? And I don't know why she's stonewalling. But on the other ones, if you get asked the Supreme Court question, what other cases, and you can't give a single case,
by the way,
you have to at least be smart enough to understand that makes you look stupid.
I agree with. It's funny that you mentioned the Supreme Court question because of all the alleged Sarah Palin foibles during the campaign. That's the only one that bothered me because I've researched every single one of them and there's no good explanation for that. She simply did not come up with a good answer to an important question. What Supreme Court decisions other than Roe v. Wade do you disagree with? She didn't come up with one. Again, I would suggest that there are a couple things going on there, one of which was that Sarah Palin knew that Katie Couric was out to get her at that point and that all bets are off. And she told me, Sarah Palin did, that she did not handle the situation well and that she essentially shut down because of it. does not in any way, shape, or form get her completely off the hook, but it does not mean she's an idiot.
All right,
This
so
is a smart woman.
John, we got to go to the last clip. And John Ziegler is the guy who created the film Media Malpractice: How Obama Got Elected and Palin Was Targeted. There's this long Palin interviews in that movie. And you say you think Kirk was an ambush. I think those were perfectly good questions she should have answered. But let's go to a different source, Bill O'Reilly, who is obviously not going to ambush her. He asked her what is a very easy question. Let's go to that clip and get your reaction to that.
One more question about President Obama. A lot of people are very nervous about him now. He's not having a good time in the White House now. You pointed out his lack of experience. You don't have that much experience. You walked away from the governorship after, what, 2 years, 2.5 years?
Going into my lame duck session, my fourth legislative session, that deciding I wasn't going to run again and not wanting to put Alaskans through a lame duck session that was
okay,
full of
but is it fair to
distraction.
for you to criticize Obama's lack of experience when somebody could make the same criticism about you on the national stage?
If you're talking about executive experience, I would put my experience up against his any day of the week. I'd been elected to local office since 1992 and was a city manager, strong mayor form of government, was the chief executive of the state, was an oil and gas regulator. There was some good experience there that could have been put to use in a vice presidential ticket. We have to remember, too, that I wasn't running for president.
No, but that's the key question, because John McCain is up there in years. You had to be qualified to take that office over.
Right, but I'm saying I was running for vice president, just like Joe Biden in running for vice president. I've never once heard you or anybody else question Joe Biden and his experience.
He's got a lot of experience. Let me be very bold and fresh again. Do you believe that you are smart enough, incisive enough, intellectual enough to handle the most powerful job in the world?
I believe that I am, because I have common sense, and I believe, the values that are reflective of so many other American values. And I believe that what Americans are seeking is not the elitism, the kind of a spinelessness that perhaps is made up for that with some kind of elite Ivy League education and a fat resume that's based on anything but hard work and private sector free enterprise principles. Americans could be seeking something like that in positive change in their leadership. I'm not saying that has to be me.
John, when I think a lot of people watch that, they see Miss Teen South Carolina. I mean, values reflective of other values. Please. Are you smart enough? She goes into spinelessness, made up for that, and then she goes to free enterprise principles. So make sense of it for me.
Well, first of all, I would say that it was not her best answer. And part of the challenge that she has there is that people like you have created this perception that she's not very bright. So then she gets asked the question,
how did the perception come? It came from answers like that.
No, wait a minute. Hold on. Wait a minute. We got to be careful not to have this situation where you have this circular argument. She's stupid because we think she's stupid, and therefore because we think she's stupid, she says things that we interpret to be stupid. Here's the deal. She mentions Joe Biden's experience, right? Mm-hmm. That sounds like an incredibly dumb thing to say because he's been in Washington all his life. She meant executive experience. Joe Biden has 0 executive experience, so she left out a word. You presume that to mean she's an idiot because she's trying to say something about Joe Biden that makes no sense. She just left out a word. In her mind, experience for president means executive experience, which she had more of than Joe Biden, more of than Barack Obama when he was elected. So that's an important distinction to make here. And by the way, it was Joe Biden who said during the campaign that when the stock market crashed, FDR went on television and calmed the country down. Now that was a stupid statement, and one of many that Joe Biden has made. Sarah Palin never said anything like that. So the real idiot in all of this is probably Joe Biden, and Barack Obama made other statements that could have been perceived.
But I asked you about the latter end of it.
Right?
I mean, look, Ian, you saw our clip on it. I didn't even talk about the Biden thing. I mean, I mentioned it in passing, but it's not that big a deal.
All right, let me connect the spinelessness thing.
Yeah.
So this is where a liberal like yourself would not be able to see it through the same prism as someone like myself. She inartfully was trying to talk about Ivy League elitism, and that in her mind, in the minds of a lot of conservatism, synonymous with Ivy League elitism is this notion that the global test, that America needs to bow down to Europe, that in a sense is a spinelessness when it comes to foreign policy, that America is bad, the rest of the world is good. That is, in our minds as a conservative, that's how we see Ivy League education, elitism, what have you. That's the connection.
Finally, John, because I'm trying to get your mindset here, that inartfulness comes across to us as she doesn't know how to speak and she's not bright. Okay,
well,
can you see that? Can you see that?
If you want to believe that, then the media has certainly given you plenty of opportunity
but
to
it's not
rationalize
the media, it's
that
Bill
belief.
O'Reilly. He lets her speak, and she bungles it. She can't do it.
That was not her best answer. How many answers has she given over the last year and a half?
Dozens that are just as bad.
Oh, please.
I mean, look at her YouTube channel.
Wait. Here's the bottom line on Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin is an incredibly intelligent, engaging, funny, I believe, sharp as a knife person, that if you spent 5 minutes with her, you would change your mind. You would never have written that Huffington Post column saying that she's stupid. This is an incredibly smart woman, and it's not just common sense. I urge you, I'm going to give you my DVD with the entire uncut Sarah Palin interview on it. I sat her down for 45 minutes, showed her clips of things in the campaign she had never seen before. We never stopped tape once. She never missed a beat. She was engaging, smart, funny, on target. You have completely underestimated her, and a lot of people have underestimated her.
Well,
and it's to your own detriment, because this is a woman who once had 80% approval ratings in Alaska because Democrats there loved her.
Because she gave away the oil money, which was kind of socialist.
No, because she attacks corruption and Republicans.
All right. John Ziegler, the movie is Media Malpractice, How Obama Got Elected and Palin Was Targeted. Thanks for coming in. We really appreciate it.
Website, howobamagotElected.com. I'm sure your viewers and listeners will be thrilled to go there.
All right. Young Turks, come right back.